Good afternoon all, and welcome to an event that I've been looking forward to all term, ever since I begged the librarian to let me invite all the stars and writer of Line of Duty, one of my favourite shows, and resulted in him a week later messaging me to say he'd spent the last 4 days watching all 5 seasons and was behind on 3 essays. I think that is a mark of quite how popular the show that today's guest stars in. But that is not all that he stars in. He has a huge plethora of awards and works over his long-spanning career. But just before we get on to that, I better point to a couple of other uni events we have coming up over the next couple of days. We have Beto O'Rourke, Congressman, Texas Senate candidate and presidential candidate indeed, coming up this evening. And our final debate of this Hillary term on civil war, the civil war debate that is happening tomorrow evening. But without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful guest this evening, Mr. Adrian Dunbar. Thank you.
Hi, Benedict. Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thanks for asking me.
No worries, absolutely our pleasure. We were thrilled to welcome you, and it's obviously a great shame to be welcoming you on Zoom, but hopefully we can welcome you to our actual debating chamber in Oxford Union at some point, even if it's just for a friendly drink. So I thought I'd start. Obviously, the Line of Duty season 6 is probably, actually almost certainly, the most anticipated television show of the year. But I thought we might start with looking at a lot of the other stuff that you've done first and maybe get onto that, because there's a huge amount that we could potentially talk about. So I thought we might start by actually talking about your writing, because you have a BAFTA nomination actually for Best Original Screenplay with Hear My Song. And so I wonder whether with your writing, it's something that you're constantly doing, you're always kind of being creative, or whether you wait for that sort of brilliant spark, that great idea, and then sort of settle down to work on something.
Yeah, yes, I'm thinking all the time about ideas, obviously, and I've written a number of screenplays, a number of first kind of eps for TV and stuff like that, and being commissioned to write them. Sadly, not a lot of them get away, but that's the nature of TV and filmmaking. Filmmaking in particular is very hard. And then I write the odd occasional piece here and there, and kind of I'm always writing kind of 2 pages for ideas and sending things through for ideas for documentaries and so forth, because I've got loads of interests outside there, all kinds of literary interests and so forth. So kind of writing's always sort of happening in one shape or form, all the time. But I don't actually, I don't consider myself as a writer as such, but yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned briefly documentaries there, and we'll get on to one that you've actually recently been hosting this year, going back to Ireland. I think we'll talk about that a little later. With that particular one, Hear My Song, about reviving the fortunes of a Liverpool nightclub, you also played the lead role there. Was that something that you wrote in mind? Did you picture yourself as you were writing it, you would play this character? Or was that something that came about after you'd written the script?
Yeah, well, I got together with another actor called Peter Chelsom, who's now a director, and Peter was going to direct it and I was going to play the lead. That was the idea. That's why we decided to sit down and write it. It was also, at a time, it was an interesting period because there weren't a lot of comedies about. I mean, there were a lot of issue movies happening because there were a lot of issues at the time, issues that we all know, like race issues, AIDS was very big. There was kind of, people wanted to write movies with a kind of, that kind of an inbuilt issue in it. And we decided we'd write a comedy, and we went to Channel 4, and it very quickly took off. Hear My Song. It was quite interesting actually how fast we got it made. So yeah, that was the idea, for me to play the lead. And so I wanted to find a really interesting character to play, someone that would kind of play into my strengths. And, because I'm quite good at comedy, although since then I've never really got a chance to do much comedy. Although recently I have done an episode of Inside Number 9, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, it was just to give us both a chance to get out there and do something.
I think you touched upon some of the difficulty of getting television made. I think this is something that Jed's actually talked about a lot with Line of Duty. He's talked about how, even though now we all look at it as this roaring success that it was actually quite some trouble to get it off the ground to begin with, and that getting even quality scripts to be made can be quite the challenge.
Yes, it can, because it's all about what the flavor of the month is, and kind of commissioning editors, kind of, they tend to narrow everything down to they're looking for one specific thing that they think is going to eat up the kind of market share. And so therefore, sometimes they miss things. And big institutions sometimes do that, especially in the music industry, I find. They're very short-sighted. So, yeah, I mean, our first series, it tinkled along nicely, but, you know, the BBC had to be convinced to go for series 2. And it was only when we did series 2, about halfway through, that it really took off, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, the public, you know, will let the broadcasters know eventually what they like, because they vote with their feet.
Absolutely do. And yeah, you mentioned the music industry a little bit briefly there, and this is something that you've actually spoken a bit about and been involved in. I believe you fronted a band, AD Dunbar and the Jonas, I think, if I've got that right at one point.
That's absolutely right, Benedict, you know, and well done on the research. I have to say, yes, no, I mean, when I left, you know, I had great difficulty with school. I didn't get many exams and so forth. I had a real problem understanding the questions, I think, was my problem. And there was definitely something going on there. But yeah, when I came out, I worked in a factory for a while, but I also had my own 3-piece country band. I always thought I was going to do something in music, really. And then I played with a guy who was called Frank Chisholm, who was an Elvis Presley impersonator. We had a kind of cabaret show that was on the road for a while, but then I went to drama school. And then years later, when things got pretty slack in my 40s, work got a bit slack. I was doing 3-4 really nice jobs a year, but there were gaps in between. I decided to go back to music, and I put a band together in the northwest of Ireland. And we used to tour. We used to play in bars and, you know, do festivals and stuff like that, kind of country jazz and stuff. And I might actually do a bit of that again, because I really enjoy performing, and I just, you know, I love music. So, you know, I'll keep my fingers crossed. Maybe that's going to happen again. I might be able to do that again.
Yes, of course, getting together and recording music a little difficult with COVID, but you know, it sounds like an area you're very excited about as well. And I wondered, did that play in a lot when you were writing that screenplay? You mentioned an Elvis impersonator there, and of course in that you have a Frank Sinatra impersonator instead in that screenplay. So did that love of music and that kind of desire to be part of that world play into you when you were writing that script about trying to find musicians to play at this nightclub?
Yeah, I mean, the drive to make it was from both our parents, Peter's parents and my parents. Both loved this tenor called Joseph Locke. It was huge in the 1940s, just after the war. You know, in Blackpool, he was earning like, you know, 60 or 70,000 pounds a year in 1947, when you could have bought a car for about 350 quid. And so our parents loved it, and we just thought, you know, then he didn't pay his tax, skipped off to Ireland. Then he didn't deal with the tax man so he could come back. Was living in kind of Torremolinos, and, you know, Pete and I just thought he'd be a great, you know, subject for a comedy. And so we built bits of his story, and then we added bits of our bits and pieces to it, and we just built it up, and that's how it kind of came together. And yeah, it was the music element is very strong in it, because, you know, music is great for carrying films, and it had that kind of journey-esque type thing in a film that's good. It's great when you start in one place in a film, travel somewhere, and if you can go across the water, that's really good, because psychologically it kind of suddenly spins the film out into a different place entirely and brings your audience, you know, completely out of themselves, and suddenly they find they're on the journey, and then you return back again. So it really feels like you've got the full 3-course meal. And so there was a bit of that going on in it, but music was absolutely central to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds very much key part of all sorts of different pieces of television and film. And
yeah, I hope people might go back and kind of rediscover Hear My Song. It was a really nice film at the time, and did really well, did very well in America, and had a good run to the Golden Globes and stuff. It was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely critical acclaim, and I very much enjoyed going back and discovering it from something slightly earlier on than I'm often accustomed to. But in terms of another different modicum is the world of theatre, which you've done a lot of work in. So yeah, you've played parts in King Lear, Exiles, and you've also done a lot of work directing as well, with Brendan at the Chelsea, and a lot of work with theatres in Ireland as well. So what attracts you to theatre, and what are kind of the bits that you find most enjoyable about it versus the television and film world?
Well, the live gig is really important, isn't it? I mean, it's the transference between the audience and the individual, the performer, things, really incredible things can happen, especially with Shakespeare and plays of that period. I mean, there are certain times when you're in a theater in the dark and an actor is kind of saying those lines, and you know that the same lines have been said for centuries, over and over. They've been reinterpreted. They've been there, and you're there that night, and an actor reinterprets them, and it's like time stands still. It's like everything stands still. You're trapped in this stasis of a moment of history that is concurrent all the way back to when Shakespeare wrote the stuff. I think plays can actually drum up the past, and their mores and their expectations that are within them, reminders of what the past was actually like. But I loved just the live gig. I love the fact that things can go wrong, that there's a worry about them. You're in there, there's an excitement about it. And it's the collectiveness which we're missing horribly now. I mean, so many people are missing the collective, sitting in an audience, cheek by jowl, with, watching a gig, listening to a musician create a bit of magic, because as we say in Ireland, it's not the singer, it's the audience that sings. So it's the collectiveness of the audience honing in to the performer that makes it so exciting. And we all miss that. We miss that. I mean, it's scary, for actors. It's not something, the older you get, it doesn't get any easier. And, and I've got something I'm coming up in the next 3 days, and I'm going to have to do some work over the weekend on it, because I'm very keen to get it right, and you have a set of standards and so forth. But I love the theatre. I love the history attached to the theatre. It's what I trained to do, Benedict. And you see, this is the thing, you train to be a theatre actor. You don't necessarily train to be on screen or on telly or anything like that. That's where you've got your guns, because in the theater, you have to use everything. It's all your body you're using. Everybody's seeing you in long shot. Nobody's in on the close-up. That's the big difference. So there's a lot more understand projecting. Your voice does a hell of a lot more. Your mannerisms do a hell of a lot more. All those things come into play in the theater, whereas the screen is pretty tight, and and watching you like that. So it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, almost completely different, separated world. And of course, the last year has not been a great one for theatre. Are you looking forward to getting back onto the stage and hopefully seeing theatres kind of recover and get back to putting on live shows?
Absolutely. I was supposed to be going to Dublin to do Uncle Vanya at the Gates Theatre. I was so looking forward to that, really looking forward to it. And then that fell apart. TV and film have managed, because they've managed to convince the insurers and that they have the working practices that allow us to work. But I am really looking forward to getting back to the theatre. I think and so many people are looking forward to getting back to listening to some music live as well. That's, musicians, we can't do it on our own. This is the thing. We just can't, yeah, of course you can busk, or you could do it, but actors, we need other actors. We need, drama is when somebody else walks on the stage. That's what it's about. So, yeah, can't wait.
You touched on something really fascinating there, which is that difference between playing an original role or playing one that's being inhabited by lots of actors before you. So, of course, when you're playing Ted Hastings or another original film role, you are the only person that's speaking these lines, the only person putting a spin on this character. But when you play, especially as you mentioned, Shakespeare, there are countless actors that have gone before you. Do you find yourself, if you've seen another actor play the role before, do you find yourself taking aspects of different actors, or do you try and take a completely original take on the role?
No, I mean, sometimes, you get precious about things. You think, I'm not going to look at anything because I just want to concentrate and see. Because, if I do look at something, conversely, there may be things I was thinking of doing that I mightn't do because somebody else did them. Or else you might think, you might be a bit of a magpie and think, I'll take this bit here and this, that can also work. It's just whatever's going to be useful for you, really. And I tend to to try and work as hard as I can to find the bits that are me, that fit the character, and then I'll work after that and see, right, okay, I just don't understand why someone would do that. I'm going to have to go and find out why that is. But yes, I would look at other characters, other actors, see what they're bringing, what bits of themselves they're bringing, for example, and yeah, it's all process. It's an interesting process, but that's something you learn at drama school, and that's something you learn about going on the stage. It's not necessarily as much on TV and film, where you're really cast for what you specifically can bring, I think.
And that link, that clear kind of reverence for the history as well, is something that slightly you don't see quite so much in television and film. That amazing link to past actors who have played the role.
Well, that's right.
You mentioned the difference there between the film and television, and of course another slight one, I think, with theatre, and the difference between some of the films coming up now can be the physical element. So you're on Graham Norton recently with Daisy Ridley, and I believe Graham brought up the fact that you're actually briefly in a Star Wars film to film as Bail Organa, and I managed to find the deleted scene on YouTube. I believe you're bringing a no confidence vote to Chancellor Valorum, and yeah. It was noticeable to me that you had blue screens in every corner around you, and the whole thing looked. It was very clearly inside a film studio without very much physical set, compared to obviously the world of theatre, where everything is so physical, and to an extent with Line of Duty, where certainly it doesn't appear like there's a lot of CGI going on. So do you find that the world of filmmaking in some areas is kind of losing that physical aspect and relying a little too much on newfangled technologies?
Well, look, film has always been a technology-driven medium, always, whether it's kind of talkies, whether it's black and white to color, whether it's VistaVision, whether it's, it's always been like that. So you have to accept that film, that's what film is about. There's a big element of film that's about new technology and the use of it. I was kind of very green to the blue screen shoot, if that makes sense. And and I turned around to the guys beside me and I said to one of them, look, have you done this before? He said, yeah, look, I've done all of these from right from the start. We've been, I said, right, it's a bit strange, I said, isn't it? Here we are, lost in space, as it were. And he goes, look, just do what they tell you. That's all you have to do, really. The first one I ever did, he said, I was sitting, there was a bar and I had to sit in a bar stool, and they said, look, just speak as if your friend is beside you. That's all you have to do. And he said, I did it all day. And he said, when I saw the film back, I was speaking to a prawn. Right. So, once you hear that, you think anything can happen now. I really don't know. Anyway, as it turns out, my character, I think, he was off fighting in the Clone Wars, I was told, and they made a mistake. I shouldn't be there. I think it would have been kind to me, really. They probably thought this guy's terrible. But anyway, yeah, I do think, I think there's a huge, as I say, film's always been technology driven, and it always will be. But at the end of the day, all that really counts is performance. If you're not believing the central character and you're not going through stuff with the central character, no matter what's going on around them, you won't be carried along by the film. If you don't kind of get Chewbacca, and if you don't get R2-D2, and if Harrison Ford isn't doing his stuff, then, you won't be carried along. You just feel a kind of love for the characters, and all the rest of it, of course, is fabulous fireworks. But right in the core of it all is the heart of any film. And all films need that heart. And if they don't have it, then ultimately they won't work. Think about Blade Runner. The most incredible piece of imagination. But at the center of it was this wonderful cyborg type love story that, where you kind of felt for these characters. And I think that's always going to be the case. The marriage between those two things, performance and technology, that's where film really wins out, if you like.
Yes, the spectacle is nothing without that story behind it, driving it forward. And of course, we suspend that when we go to the theatre we sometimes suspend that belief of realism or kind of exactly how it should look, but we're carried by those performances. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And thoughts, of course. The great thing about the theatre is that you get to rattle out some really nice philosophical ideas. You tease things out in the theatre. You got more time. It's about language, which is why, England has always, or the UK has always been criticized, because we're such a literary tradition. For us, it's always about language. It's about, the language is the main thing, what we're saying, how we're saying it, the degrees of which we're saying it, the subtleties that we can bring to bear with it, for us, it's a real language-based, industry for us. But, and sometimes that's fabulous. And sometimes, we need to put a card chase in.
And of course, yeah, in a number of your shows there is plenty of action along with a brilliant narrative. Talking about one of the other shows you've done doing more recently, which is Bloods on Channel 5. Where you get to play Dr. Hogan, and I love this. I implore anyone to go and watch this. You get to play a character under a lot of suspicion, under a shroud of kind of slight mystery and dread. Even as things clear up, there's always this slight element going on there. So I just wondered whether do you really love to play a character where you're kind of constantly questioning them, where you don't quite know what kind of side they land on, or do you prefer playing someone who's very much kind of straight up one of the good guys, slightly more clearly?
I played a lot of characters, you're right, where they're kind of under suspicion, where the audience quite don't don't quite know, but I kind of like that. I kind of like the ambivalence, and it just so happens that with Hastings and in Blood, both those characters have been under suspicion. And I like to play that as far as I can. I mean, the trick is that all the time you're saying to yourself, when it becomes apparent that I'm a good person, the people who have been sticking with me are going to rack back and they're going to think about all those scenes somehow where they felt I was not a good person. And they're going to see if it actually stacks up. And that's, that's the challenge with these parts, that when people actually get to the end, they can go, do you know what? I can see exactly why he did that. Do you know what? Yes, that's why that happened. You know what? Yeah, I was right about that. That's, you want them to get that payoff when you get to the end. So you can't, you have to be subtle about it. You have to really make the choices work in that respect, So yeah, I do like playing characters like that, but I'd also like to play some, just some nice people now and again. That would be nice.
And of course, the slightly insane thing with
Ted's a good guy in Line of Duty. Ted's a good guy.
That's what I was about to say. That's the slightly amazing thing, is you get to do both really in Line of Duty. Is it seems absolutely absurd to anyone watching the early seasons that Ted could be anything other than a good guy, and yet somehow we all found ourselves halfway through season 5 questioning just about everything that we knew because of the narrative and of course your performance in it as well. But yes, I think one reviewer described the Hogan family in that drama Blood as the unluckiest family in Ireland, was one take on it. But certainly the relationship there and the acting makes a very compelling viewing. Another aspect, of course, of the film industry can be the action, as we just spoke about. And although it's often left to Martin and Vicky in Line of Duty for a little bit more of the action scenes, you've certainly had your moments. You got to take on a balaclava man with a gun, and you got to go undercover as well. So do you really enjoy shooting those action scenes, or do you find them a little bit kind of stressful as you try and make sure to give a performance with all the stunt work going on?
I used to love doing stunts. I mean, I do a stunt in The Crying Game where I absolutely love doing this. I'm in a car and I'm wired up with about 25 squabs, the explosive devices that are going to go off. And I've got an Uzi, and down my hand there's a wire and there's a kind of button that I've got to press. So I've got to detonate myself. So there's a car coming down the street. The guy says, I'll keep it at exactly 25 miles an hour. So I jump out of the car, run round. This car comes down. I jump over the bonnet as it's rolling. I then open up with this Uzi And then when I see the guy level his thing, I then press the button and I shoot myself and knock myself back. And I hit the ground. It's in the crying game. It's a great, I absolutely love doing it. Because I do like things that are a bit reckless, as long as the people around you are professional. You know, if you get a lot of professional stuntmen, they'll see you through anything. So, and then it allows you to do something. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing of it. You know, that's where the safety in it all comes in the timing. So I love doing stunts like that. And, you know, sadly, as you say, it's mostly Martin and Vicky who get to do all the kind of exciting stuff these days.
Run around a bit more, but yeah, no, absolutely. The behind the scenes art of filmmaking, when you see how they do all these stunts, especially the physical ones, is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
I will quickly add in here for our audience that, of course, we have our Q&A function going on. I've already seen a couple of questions slide in. We'll get onto them towards the end of our hour. So if you've got any questions at all to ask Adrian, please do chuck them in the chat there. I'm, of course, not really qualified to do this interview, not being at least one rank senior to you as an officer. But I'm thrilled that to have a chance to talk to you a little bit more. We've already touched on it, of course, about Line of Duty. And I'll try and resist just begging for season 6 spoilers for the next half an hour. But as you said, it was something that started quite small and then has grown massively. It's become pretty much the biggest television show in the UK and internationally. Do you find there's a slight added pressure now when you go to make a new series, that you know there's a slight weight of expectation that wasn't there at the beginning? Or once you get there, you enjoy it just as much as you did filming season 1?
Well, once we get there, of course, we do enjoy it as much as season 1. But yes, there is. We keep raising the bar. I mean, I think, you know, it's down to Jed, of course, and the writing. And he is he has consistently, I think, upped his game. Every time we get the new series, we think, wow, he's keeping the standard up. And I think that's why, you know, if there was America, I think, you know, they possibly would have handed, after series 2, they would have handed it over to a team of writers. We'd have been doing 13 episodes a year, and very quickly it may have run out of steam. But because we have one writer who's decided to absolutely stay with it because he loves it and it's his baby, then the standard just keeps, he's been keeping the standard up quite remarkably, I think, you know, over the years. So we're kind of like nearly 10 years in, and I think, you know, I don't know whether you've seen the trailer for, it's, you know, I mean, you do realize that, you know, once you see this year's trailer, that actually it's pretty good again. You know, I think he's done it again, has Dr. Mercurio.
He absolutely has. The trailers, which give very little away, but tease a wonderful season again. And of course, introducing Kelly MacDonald playing Joanne Davidson. And I wonder what you thought, because the show absolutely has this tradition of wonderful guest stars throughout, whether for a season or for an episode. Kind of Craig Parkinson, Keely Hawes, of course, early on, Lenny James in season 1, Jessica Raine briefly, of course. So how do you think that these changing guest stars, these new takes, these new characters, do you think that's part of what keeps it so fresh? Is that amongst this core brilliant trio, you have these new characters coming in and going out and constantly keeping the show fresh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea is one of the things that makes the show unique. I mean, a lot of procedurals, they do have guests who come in, but we give the show over completely to a lead. You know, they may have guest leads along with the leads, but we just say they're the lead. It's their story, and we have to come into their story some way. So that's kind of one of the unique elements. And we've always had really powerful actors and, and very interesting actors, I think. Very excellent casting always. And, you know, they always find an actor who can absolutely take that role and run with it. And I think, you know, casting Kelly has been, once again, a really brilliant idea because of the nature of the character that she's playing. She really, you know, she can bring a lot of her stuff to it. And I think she does. I'm really looking forward to seeing it because, of course, you know, I'm usually in the office. I don't get to see all, you know, we don't get to see everything. We're not in charge of all the storylines, just our own. So we tend to watch it in real time. You know, I haven't seen anything yet. I'm quite excited about it. we're all going to sit down and watch it with the audience in real time, because that's the best way to watch Line of Duty. And then you can talk about it all week.
It is one of those shows you have to watch as it airs, or you spend the next week having to hide from every single social media platform and person in the world if you don't want it spoiled. And of course,
Yeah.
we see those guest stars have a slightly scarily high death rate. It seems the chance of surviving do seem quite low. But of course, Ace Batty is reappearing in the trailer of season 6, and a couple of people escape death, such as Ros Huntley and Jill Bigelow aren't dead yet. Is there one star, even if they are dead, that you really enjoyed working with, that you'd love to have seen kind of come back a little bit? Who was there kind of a particular favourite that you love to work alongside?
Well, of course, I have been at the forefront of a petition and a campaign to bring back Neil Morrissey, because we were at drama school together and we're really good friends, and he's the best entertainment officer any company could have. So I'm really keen to get Neil back, because Nigel, his character, that character of Nige going back, he is in possession, I know, of some stuff. I keep saying this. We saw him at the end of the thing with his lawnmower. We know he doesn't have a limp. We know he's a real slippery piece of work, and he's got information. So I keep saying to Jed, when are we getting Nige back? He could tidy up quite a bit for us here, So, I'm keeping the bring Neil Morrissey back thing going.
I thought, that moment where he drops his cane and sprints off is, one of those brilliant Line of Duty moments. You absolutely do not see it coming. Well, you spoke there about talking to Jed and kind of petitioning things. And I did wonder, he's spoken that he has certainly outlines of future plans and ideas. How much do you guys as a cast have an idea of where things are going? Or is it only when you get the scripts for the new season that you actually know what's going on?
Yeah, it's only when we get the scripts that we know what's going on, and then Vicky tends to be the first person to read them, and then she starts being an idiot and sending us texts saying, "Oh my God, episode 2, you won't believe what's happened to your character," and she winds us up. So she forces us. Actually, we usually get the first 3 episodes, because we shoot everything in 2 blocks, usually, not this time, but usually we shoot in 2 blocks. So therefore, you're keeping quite a complicated storyline in your head for just 3 eps. And you have one director for that. So one director will take those 3 blocks, we'll shoot those 3 episodes, and then they'll go away and start to edit. So the edit starts immediately. And, we don't find out, and we don't know. And I've never been in a kind of ongoing series before. And after season 2, I suddenly realized the writer has absolute control over your life. You're sitting there thinking, if Jed wants to, he could just throw me out a window. And so, consequently, we're all really nice to Jed.
Of course.
He's our best mate.
Do not want him to, yes, right, you're out being thrown out a 5th-story hostel window, not at all.
Yeah,
and you mentioned there the filming, of course, this year you had a bit of a challenge. I suspect having a qualified doctor as your showrunner probably helped you all work out how you're going to do it. But did you find a challenge, because you did this first initial few weeks of filming back very early last year and then had to come back many months later? Did you find a bit of a challenge getting back into it and making sure all your haircuts were the same as well? Or was it just like being home again?
Some people were looking a bit porky, Some people couldn't get into their waistcoats, but it was a challenge. I mean, we shot about a month or so, got episode 1 done, kind of thing, and bits and pieces of 2 maybe, and then suddenly we were finished. So that whole system that we'd been used to of shooting 3 episodes in a block and 3 episodes in a block, that was gone. And when we came back, now we found ourselves having to. We were all over we could be with 2 different directors the same day. We could be shooting scenes from scene 2 and then jumping to scene 5 and then back to 4. It really was quite. I'm just going to turn this off. It really was quite difficult, actually. And the storyline is complicated. Now and again, I had to be prompted. Jed would come in and say, "Don't forget, this has happened. And we're going from this, we're going into that." And I go, "Oh God, yeah, right, okay," just to get the pitch of the scene right. And so it really wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. Yeah.
You talked about Vicky there, kind of annoying you and Martin by messaging you things about the scripts and stuff, and certainly not just on screen, but it seems off screen that you three have this amazing friendship between the three of you. I think probably best embodied by Vicky. I don't know quite how willingly managing to persuade you and Martin to participate in some of her dance TikToks on her Twitter and things. Yeah. So was that something that came about immediately? Did you all click from kind of the very start, or is it just a case of you've worked with them for 10 years? It was kind of inevitable this amazing friendship would build up over that time.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was kind of inevitable, but maybe not inevitable. You know, you still have to have the chemistry. And I think Jed talks about the fact that during season 2, really halfway through, is when they realized that the three of us had a sort of chemistry between us that sort of really, you know, audiences really, they really warmed to what was happening between the three of us. And that's where the core of the show was going to exist. Beyond that, that's when he knew, if you like. And then, you know, we've just, you know, it's like going on holiday with the same three people all the time. You know, you kind of work away all year and then you go, all right, time to get back to our little flats in Belfast. We're all together and we're all going to be, you know, cooking for one another and going out together. None of that happened, of course, this time. And it was awful because, you know, we usually go out, we run into, you know, we go to bars where we know some of the other productions will be there. You know, there's the Game of Thrones guys over there. Let's go and chat to them. And, you know, things like that used to happen in Belfast. And sadly, we didn't get any of that this time. But yeah, we're very, very close and kind of, you know, and I mean, with a show like this, of course, taking off, and we didn't know it was going to get this big. And you know, I knew Vicky before, and Vicky knew Martin before. So I worked with Vicky before we did it, and Martin and Vicky had worked together before, and they knew loads of people and stuff like that. But we really didn't know it would get that big. And now we're in a place where really the only people we can talk to about how mad it's all getting is one another. Where we kind of have Zoom calls and we go, you know, did you see this, or did you see that, or have you seen this? You know, somebody's just done this. I mean, what is that about? You know, so you know, it's made us the success has actually drawn us closer. Of course, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, that chemistry is incredibly visible on screen. And you mentioned there that filming, I think it's been since season 2, you guys have filmed in Belfast. And of course, there's this other strong link to Ireland as well, being in your character. And of course, you grew up in Ireland. And I thought one of the amazing things is having rewatched seasons 1 to 5 recently, I would say is research for this interview, but it's actually just more of an annual tradition before the new season comes out. There is, of course, this amazing line and speech from Ted in season 1 to Steve, where he talks about the 2 Catholic boys working in Ireland and going over a pipe bomb. And then that incredibly memorable line, "Nobody's blacker than me, son." Do you think, did Jed have this idea of this backstory that would then get fleshed out, you know, even 4 seasons later? Or was that something that kind of you talked to him about, or did this plan always exist? Because it's amazing, these kind of references so early on, but then kind of come to fruition later.
I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure, but I do remember that when I did the meeting about the character, when I talked to the director and Jed and so forth, I said, look, you know, if you're going to set up a unit with someone to lead it, then you're going to need somebody who really isn't that well known. So they can't be, you know, immediately tapped up and be collusive with other members of the force in the UK. And I said, you know, there's a big tradition, especially during the 1980s and mid 80s and into the 90s, of people leaving the RUC, guys leaving the RUC who had extensive anti-terrorist and, you know, experience and coming to work in the UK, in the Met, in various, you know, police forces up and down the UK. You know, they did transfer quite easily. And sometimes, you know, they probably wanted to get away from what was happening there. They had things they wanted to leave behind. They wanted a new start. And they brought a lot of expertise with them into these scenarios. And I think they took all that on board. And you know, and thought, yeah, that's a really good idea. We can. I mean, I do think they wanted someone from Northern Ireland to do it. I've got a feeling they may have one, but I think I just fleshed out a lot of their ideas, and made it more concrete for them, and that's why they were able to offer me the job.
And yeah, you of course get to speak. You and Vicky both, of course, get to speak with your home accent, whereas Martin has to put on English accent. Do you guys find that quite satisfying? Do you kind of slightly get to ridicule him for having to keep a different accent going throughout the rest of the show?
It's quite strange, because when he arrives in, he doesn't stop. That's it. He arrives in as the character. He doesn't get out of character. He speaks in the accent all the time. And then you forget about it. You think that's him, It's only when he starts to speak in a Scottish accent that you go, that's a bit of a head wreck, Martin. And so now and again, when, if we have a kind of party scenario and we get him a bit drunk, he'll suddenly slip out of his accent. He'll slip back into his native Scots. So, but yeah. I mean, I think it's good to do your stay close to your accent, especially in TV. Although, I might do something else soon where I may not do that just for a change. Who knows?
And of course, a great part of your character is these sort of, I think they're sometimes referred to as Tedderisms, these different little lines about sucking these and all kind of this. And actually, some of them I kind of noticed don't always appear early on, and they kind of appear throughout. Different ones pop up throughout the series. So I wonder, do you contribute to those a little bit, or is that kind of, I assume you're probably giving input to Jed on what you think Ted might say or might bring in as a mannerism?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, all the Mother of Gods and stuff that's all mine, and kind of Sucking Diesel is mine, and I just chuck those things in. But then Jed, he will go away and we do Q&As in Belfast, and afterwards he might say, look, anybody write down some stuff, anything you want Ted to say, So floating up the lagan in a bubble came out of that. It's such a Belfast phrase. And there's a new one coming this year, How You're Wished, which means, stay quiet, be quiet. And so that's coming up. And there'll be a few more fellas. I mean, I have to rein him back sometimes, Jed. I have to kind of say, Jed, I can't be just saying this. We're going to have to cut 2 or 3 out of this scene because there's just too many of them. So I kind of ration them a bit. But I hear there are drinking games, obviously. Yeah. Fella, somebody takes a shot. Every time I say Mother of God, you have to down a pint. Sounds great, doesn't it? I couldn't do it anymore, but when I was 22, I loved it.
Yeah, sign was entered popular culture to that extent. It's a sign of something special. I believe you have a mural with that phrase about we're floating up the lagan on a bowl.
Yes,
I think you have a mural in Belfast.
I have a mural in Belfast. Yeah, very, very good. You've made it when you get a mural. And yeah, that's right. And a good one as well. That was good. Very good. It's always good when the quality is good. Yeah, so, hopefully it'll stay like that. It'll not be defaced.
Very good. Yes, and Vicky has a picture in front of it on her Instagram. I did wonder, actually, given that your character often introduces himself, as Hastings like the battle, to be clear, I did wonder whether you'd ever introduce yourself as Dunbar like the battle. I discovered that there is actually a Scottish battle, Dunbar, and I wonder whether you ever took your character's phrase.
Yeah, during the Jacobite Rising, 1741 and all that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I should do, actually. That's a good point. I may actually start doing that. Thank you very much, Ben.
I thought that was a nice parallel with yourself and your character.
That is going to happen. I can guarantee.
Wonderful. We have a lot of questions piling in, so I better move on to some of them in order that we get through them. Of course, the first three actually indeed are, of course, with exactly the same question. Are you H? We did, of course, have a little reveal at the end of season 5 that H may not actually be one individual person. But I suppose I better ask you, are you H?
It's a very difficult question to answer, really, because, Jed doesn't let us know, does he? I mean, none of us really know the twists and turns, the machinations of his mind. Who knows? Anybody. I mean, the latest trailer, it's pointing, fingers in all kinds of directions that you wouldn't have imagined before. So, Jed is very clever at kind of suddenly go, oh, God, right. Oh, right. That thing that he did in episode 3 of series 4, that's what he's, so the clues are there as to who people are. There will be things revealed in this series. There will be things revealed.
Definitely, the way that we can have to re-examine every single character and not quite sure who is who. and what's going on is a great hallmark of the show. Okay, we'll put you down for a maybe for whether Ted Hastings is H, and similarly for Kate Fleming. Can you tell us your favourite moments? This is from Vivek Harrier. Could you tell us your favourite moment or moments during the filming of the show? Is there any particular scene or event that you really enjoyed filming?
I do like the interrogation scenes. I think they are very close to theatre. I mean, as close as you can get on telly to theatre. They're like 2, 3, 400s, very tight, very close. And they have a kind of theatrical flow to them that you kind of start getting, and you kind of know where the editor is going to put the knife in. So I do really like those scenes. Even though they are very, very difficult, but there's a real feeling of achievement after you've, once you've done them, and then seeing them is wonderful. I mean, sometimes we shoot a lot more than you see. Sometimes a 30-minute scene could end up as 17 and a half minutes of screen time. And, so sometimes you go, oh God, all that work, and then it's condensed because, the editor and Jed, they made a decision that we already knew quite a bit of this stuff, so we could kind of, tighten it up. So, but yeah, I think the interrogation scenes are quite wonderful. Yeah.
It is amazing quite how much tension and thrill, because often those interrogation scenes stretch to half an hour at the end of a series. And it's amazing how much tension there is in essentially 4 people sitting around a table often and talking, and you find more tension there than in many a car chase or action scene as well. Here we go from an anonymous attendee, which is, given the success of Fisherman's Friend, is there a gap in the market for an Adrian Dunbar musical comedy set in a Cornish village? What would that look like? So perhaps mixing those two things you spoke about, both music and comedy, do you think there's a gap in the market for that in Cornwall?
Yeah, write it. Somebody write it. Right. No, I'm bang up for that. We'll go and do a meeting. We'll bring it to Channel 5. We'll be shooting it next year. Just do it.
There we go. Anonymous attendee, whoever that was, get writing on it. You've got Adrian. So here we go. Now this is an interesting question from Holly here, which is, was Lindsay Denton guilty? Which I think is probably playing on this slight moral grey area that we have in so many characters. So what were your final thoughts on Lindsay Denton as a character?
Well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, we kept swinging between, as an audience, we kept swinging between, oh my God, she can go around and beat the shit out of somebody. And then, oh my God, that's awful that's happening to her. I thought Keeley was brilliant at that, once again. And that's what Jed's brilliant at doing, is he's great at kind of pulling you around, pulling your feelings around. Was she guilty? I don't know. The jury's still, I don't know. I think she probably was. Ultimately, yeah. She'd done enough to kind of push the dial into the red, I think. Yeah.
And of course, Keeley appeared in one of Jed's other massive shows, Bodyguard, and you actually had a little crossover in a comic relief sketch where you found her in the boot of a car. I wondered, have you petitioned Jed to have a slightly more serious crossover if Bodyguard ever returns? Are you trying to get Ted Hastings to appear and go and meet Richard Madden's character?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Jed's still big on Bodyguard, but Vicky Martin and I are going to go, what are you talking about? Bodyguard's not coming back, Jed. No. But yeah, that would be good. I think, getting Richard's character to get him back again. But I think he's off to America now. I think, we'll not see Richard back for a while. But yeah, interesting.
On crossover, right? Lots of questions coming in here. We have anything you wish you knew from Claire Haroch. Anything you wish you knew when you started your career? A bit of advice that might have helped you as a young actor.
Anything I wish I'd known? Yes, probably wait till afterwards before you start getting stuck into the free wine.
Excellent advice.
Wait till you've spoken to everybody before you get stuck into the wine. Yeah.
So yeah, save the celebration for after. Good advice for Claire there. And then another one here about some advice, which is, how would you prepare for a role, either on TV or on stage? Does it differ, your preparation? What's your approach to playing a role?
Yes, yes. There is it is different because there are a lot more elements to bring together for the theatre. I mean, you have to understand, uh, psychologically the journey of the character and the arc and so forth when for TV and film. That really is important because they're so tight. You need to kind of, you know, they, you need to know what the beats are absolutely going through. Whereas in the theatre, there's so much else to bring to it, just the physical nature of everything, your physicality, your voice, your understanding of the part, you know, and stagecraft, really, understanding what stagecraft is about. And, rather than someone else is lighting you, you are finding your light on the stage. There's all kinds of other things. It is different in that respect, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
And then Amber Seward here has touched on something which is talking about how the show's been received by the UK police. And of course, we get to hear all of your characters spouting a lot of acronyms. I think that was touched upon in another comic relief sketch, the number of sheer acronyms going on. You have to pay quite a lot of attention to keep up with the show. But how is the show being received by UK police? Do you think that they appreciate the realism, or do they kind of find it not quite as good a representation as they might like, especially given the sheer number of corrupt police officers? It seems to imply there might be.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cressida Dick, yeah, she doesn't like it. She's on quoted as saying that, it doesn't bear any resemblance. However, I have to say that talking about police procedurals, at least we show all the time that there's a lot of slog involved in police work. 40, 50 people sitting at computers trying to find that one little thing that's going to make all the difference to a case. And the police themselves like it, I think. I mean, any interaction I have with the police over the years has been always very good. Because I think all of them remember at the start of their career, somebody who's a bit crusty like Ted, who's a bit of an authoritarian, a bit moralistic, one of the old school, and very good at man management, not quite good with the girls, so they kind of warm to his character, I think. And anytime I meet them or I see them, they always give me a smile and a bit of a thumbs up. Keep going, keep doing whatever you're doing. And I do think that one of the interesting thing about the show that not a lot of people point out is the fact that we are trying to find bent coppers who are involved in corruption. And corruption it's starting to rear its head, actually. You're starting to see a lot of arrests being made across the country for big, scams that have been going on that could only have been going on with the collusion of police officers. And it costs the tax take, it runs the billions every year that is costing the country. And a lot of these things can only be happening with the collusion of police officers. So we haven't really got to the bottom of it yet. One of the core themes of Line of Duty is actually, I think, getting bigger. It's not something that's drifting away. It's actually getting bigger, and will continue to get bigger. So yeah, it's nice to be on the pulse of something. I think that's very current, and I think the police understand that.
Actually, touching on something a little bit more serious there, as well as, of course, the news this morning, the disappearance of Sarah Everard, tragic disappearance. Yeah. They've recently arrested a police officer with involvement in that. So all of a sudden, the outlandish idea of high-level corruption and murders in the police force is all too tragically real.
Yes, it's very, very worrying, that particular incident. I mean, we've all been worried. My wife Anna has been talking about it for days, and we went past Clapham Common the other day, and we just think, wow, that girl. I mean, it really has touched everybody, I think, because there hasn't been something like this really within lockdown as such. And you just think about her parents and the worry and so forth, and the police officer who was reporting it today. It wasn't that kind of usual, standard reporting. You tell the guy's got 4 daughters, I think, himself, and I think he was really affected by it. And it's a real worry for the public when we think that the police are corrupt. And it's one of the reasons, I think, why people warm to the character of Ted and, you know, to Vicky's character and Martin's character. It's the idea that, you know, in positions of authority, we like to think, you know, that the people who occupy them do have a moral center and will do the right thing at the right time. Sadly, you know, we've seen that that's kind of lacking quite a bit in recent times. And I think people are, you know, people need to feel that those people are still there and that they still have a sense of public duty. And that's why they warm to Ted, and maybe why the police warm to him as well.
It is, yeah, reassuring to see someone with such a moral code always trying to do the right thing, and indeed trying to find people like Carly Kirk in the show who have gone absent just like that. We'll move on to a slightly lighter note for the last couple of questions. So this one is, if you could work with anyone alive or dead, who would you choose and why? Perhaps a guest star for season 7 Line of Duty, alive or dead, who would you like it to be?
Alive or dead? Well, if it was somebody alive, I'd quite like to work with my old mate Gary Oldman again. I think Gary would be a really interesting person to bring into Line of Duty, and you know, we worked together quite a bit when we were younger. Dead, any number of people, you know, Spencer Tracy, you know, Humphrey Bogart, Kirk Douglas, you know, I don't know, is Kirk still hanging on? He's been hanging on for a long time, hasn't he? And you know, Burt Lancaster I loved as well. So there's been loads of actors of that period that I really loved, and you know, and actresses, of course. You know, quite like to get somebody like Judi Dench in as a kind of character. You know, that would be a laugh, wouldn't it? I mean, we can get Dame Judy, or even Ian McKellen. What a fabulous actor Ian is. You know, there's so many actors, Patty Stewart, so many actors like that we could get in and kind of. I mean, the crossovers would be amazing, wouldn't they? Patty Stewart, Ian McKellen as a double act, you know, like a Beckett play in the middle of Line of Duty. That'd be really interesting.
That would be absolutely phenomenal. I hope if any of those mentioned actors are listening, I hope you get into contact, because it would be wonderful to see any of them continue that rich tradition of Line of Duty guest stars. And one attendee has asked whether at any point during this interview you yet texted urgent exit required. I hope not. I wouldn't want to see.
No, I did get a call there. I was worried at one point. Yeah,
wouldn't like to know what that would do to the interviewer. And then perhaps just one final question. We're tragically running out of time. I could talk all day to you. It's been such a great interview. But one final question, perhaps. Who was your favourite bent copper? What was your favourite portrayal? And perhaps it's going to be someone in season 6, but maybe one that we know about.
Could be. Could be.
A mysterious answer. There we go. And that leaves us, I think, the end of a wonderful hour. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, thank you. That was great. Thanks very much. Well done. Well done.
And
research.
Of course, Sunday, 21st of March sees the return of Line of Duty season 6. It sounds like I was asked to say that as publishing, but in actual fact, half my personality is just telling everyone I know to watch Line of Duty. It is absolutely brilliant. Anyone who's lucky enough to be taking part in the meet and greet with Adrian afterwards, make sure to join that in just a second and ask him any more questions. Adrian, thank you so much for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully we'll see you all, the audience, back here soon. And hopefully we can thank you at some point with a real drink at the Oxford Union in the future.
Yes, please.
One more time. Thank you, Adrian.
All right. Thanks, Benedict. Bye now.